Hi, friends. Welcome to a college essay planning extravaganza. We're going to be talking about a whole bunch of things we'll get to in just a second. We're glad you're here. I'm Ethan. Hannah is standing by fixing her Google Chrome, and we'll be back in a second. But our check-in question, if you're watching the recording, is how you feeling? This is a lovely little mood meter that we sometimes use at the start of, sessions and workshops to just be like, how are folks doing? And so far, we've got a wide range in the chat from overstimulated to tired and optimistic to pleasant, drained, and blessed. So, hi, I'm glad you're here. Here are some weird things that make me happy as an adult. Check, I don't know if you've seen this meme, but writing with a nice pen and having plans canceled. This is me right here, if you really knew me. Um, fresh, clean sheets. Opening a brand new sponge. I feel so seen reading this part. And then the one that made me post this morning is I was literally stretching out my back and I was like, oh my gosh, so good. And I can just imagine my daughter looking at me saying, Dad, you're weird. So I think this means I'm feeling happy. I think I'm also caffeinated or something. Um, if you've never met me before, here are some identities that I claim. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a father, husband, writer, teacher. I'm not going to read all these things to you. But I'm also a hugger, if you really knew me. And it's really great to like be mostly almost post-pandemic, although that's arguable, and being, seeing people and being able to hug again. Hannah, I'll let you intro yourself.
My name is Hannah Lim, and I am the director of workshops for College Essay Guy. My background is in teaching. I used to be a junior year English teacher, an avid teacher and coordinator. I've known Ethan for a really long time. So while I was teaching, I was essay coaching for him. I wrote curriculum for college essay stuff. I was a workshop facilitator, and now I help organize them. I work with lots of different counselors like all over the country and even the world, just helping them really create just an amazing workshop experience, because we love workshops. We love being able to work with a bunch of students at once. And so, yeah, I identify with a lot of different things. You'll see my little cats walking around sometimes. And yeah, that's me.
That's your tech person I was referring to earlier. We're talking about first, Hannah's going to talk about recommended timeline. We're going to go from the big picture into the specifics of essays. I'm going to talk about brainstorming. Hannah's going to talk about engaging students with awesome software that we know and use and love, and something called topic checks. Then I'm going to talk about some specific tips on creating a safe space for students so they feel really free to open up, if, specifically with essay work. We're going to talk about structures. We're going to invite somebody to like unmute and like brainstorm with us live, like, hey, let's work out your essay plan. So it'll kind of get everybody else's brain going. And then we'll do a quick PSA on some things that are coming up in CEG land. And then we're going to give away some free workshops. And we'll do Q&A. All this and more. Let's do this. Hannah, I'll kick it to you. Do you want me to keep sharing or do you want to share?
It will not work. So
Great. And then I'm on it. We're good.
yeah. So I am so excited to talk to everyone about the calendar, because the thing about, I would just argue, life in general is that timing is super important. Someone on our team, Tom, and I love this book called When by Daniel Pink, I believe. And it's all about timing, because you could have the right thing at the wrong time, may not be the right thing. So right thing at the right time is the right thing. So something that we believe is really good is to create a calendar. And I'm sure you all have calendars. However, the reason why I'm emphasizing the calendar is because, as you know, with our students, sometimes, we get really frustrated with them because they don't think about, like certain plans that are coming up. They just think about the deadline. Like, oh, well, the deadline's not until November 1st, or it's not until January 1st. I have all this time. As a former English teacher, I also know that students think that pressure makes diamonds, so they procrastinate to the last minute. And I just want to show you how to create a sense of urgency for your students so that they feel like, oh, actually, I don't have as much time. So I'm going to actually share my screen here just to share, like, maybe this is something that you can use to share with your students. So let's say you get them in August. I would say overall, like this is what I call a one-on-one student calendar. So I just put in like a fake homecoming. This is like, if you need to communicate with them, hey, I'm going to be at NACAC, I'm not going to be as available. And so something that they don't anticipate every single year is that the EAED deadline is right after Halloween. And so it's like, are you really going to work on it? Are you really going to meet with me? And so what I want to advocate for you is to set boundaries on when is going to be the last day that you review essays. So, and put that in the calendar that they can see, because here, if you look at College Essay Guide, we have an end of service date of November 15th. So making that very clear from the beginning. Yes, I know that you think that the deadline is, let's say, January 1st, but it's not actually the real deadline. And so even, let's say, I'm based in California, UC apps this year are due on the, I mean, they're always due on the 30th, but Thanksgiving break is actually is it the last week? Yeah, it's the last week. So they don't actually have until the 29th to bother you. They only have until, like, let's say the 22nd, right? So every year this changes. And so they need to be able to see that. Another thing they don't anticipate is like winter break. They think that they're going to work on it, but they're not going to work on it during break. And they shouldn't expect you to respond to anything either. So set these dates, these end of service dates or end of help dates or whatever you want to call it with your team, so that they can create that sense of urgency so that they're working a bit quicker. Because as you know, I mean, this is a beautiful open space in October, but that's why we call it, what is this, Sucktober, or what was the positive version of this?
Rocktober. We
Rocktober, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is when we're all super busy, right? So yes, it does look very open, but it would be nicer if they, started a little bit earlier. So that is one thing that we do recommend for that. My slides still aren't syncing. So Ethan, can you reshare your screen?
Got it. Coming back. I will reshare.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to write to them.
It's so funny. We're like, we know how to do this. And then, wah, wah. Here it goes. All right, coming up.
Okay, all right. So if you actually so we're going to send these slides out to you. The program that I've used since COVID decided to not work today. So normally if you click on the slide, you should be able to look at how you can create that calendar. But you could also just Google how to create a separate calendar on your Google Calendar. But CEG is also planning to release our own with key dates that you can share out with your students. So
yeah, let me say 2 words about that. This is something that we've been like excited to do for a while. And like just having a Google Calendar where you can just be like, add upcoming webinars. And then we're also going to include in that Google Calendar essentially all of these key dates. So if you're listening to this and you're like, that would be cool to create, I don't know when I'm going to create that, stand by, we'll email you soon. So
okay. So recommended schedule for brainstorming, revising, finalizing essays. So overall, it depends on how much time you have with your students. So I know that if you're at a public school versus independent school, all of those things can vary. And so as far as brainstorming and structuring, we do say that it could be done within a week. Sometimes it could be done within a day. But again, that also depends on how many hours you have with your students. So we recommend that brainstorming and structuring is done within a day or two. And then we recommend another day to do something we call a topic check. And ideally, it would be before they leave for the summer, because it's the worst when a student works all day or a couple weeks, months on a topic that is like the most cliche topic ever, right? Because for them, it's the first time they're ever writing it. So they're super excited to write about their ACL tear and all that stuff, right? And so it's really important to try to get these topic checks done. And we're going to talk about topic checks and how to do them. And again, some students will procrastinate. So set boundaries when you'll be reviewing essays. Again, they only see the deadlines and not the holidays. So moving on. So
do you want
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so the times we recommend actually hosting the workshops, I would say, is ideally junior year. So I meet with counselors all the time. That's like basically my job, is to meet with counselors from all over the country. Even today I met with several folks on the East Coast, and there are varying I guess like levels of experience with this. So I know that some of you are like, of course you do it junior year, but for some people it's like, what, you do it junior year? So even at my school, my high school that I worked at, they did not start until senior year. Ideally, it would be junior year after APs, a couple weeks before finals. So there is like that kind of like small window of opportunity where you're getting these students to like really think about it. But I also want to emphasize that every school is different. Some schools don't have APs and, all these different things. And so sometimes early summer actually does work for some schools. Sometimes I'm invited to present in person, and these students literally come the day after the last day of school. It still boggles my mind that they all show up, but I'll be with them for like 3 days, and it's like, wow, that's amazing. But it works for them, and the counselors stay and they help out the students on all of that. Or sometimes schools will arrange a time to do it right before returning to school, but I already know what you're thinking. How are you going to get all their attention while they're already off on break? That's my question too. So that's why we do emphasize that it should be kind of around the time where they're already in school, because once they get into break, you kind of lose them, right? So during the school year, it would be ideal if you did English classes, but I know what you're probably thinking too. Our English classes, our English teachers would never let us take up time. I totally hear that. Every student takes English. So that's why they put so much burden on English teachers to disseminate information and all these things. I was definitely that person, but sometimes you can kind of maybe even phrase it in such a way so that it's maybe a break that they can get, where you can go in there and present some of the information. If you do them after school, we have to think about the times like after sports, after dinner, even getting those things in mind, because we have seen that sometimes we'll put on workshops and students don't come because they're literally not home. And so this is if you do them virtually. You could also do them after school if it doesn't conflict with school events. If you have a non-traditional schedule, you have like block schedule, and you have the I guess the luxury of allowing students to come into like a bigger space, you could do it that way also. But we're going to have a time to be able to talk about what might work for your school. So stay tuned for that.
Awesome.
Yeah. So seniors, let's say your school's not giving you time, you could still do a senior year, but it needs to be well before the November 1st early admissions deadlines. If you have some students who aren't really, kind of vying for that date, then that's fine too. But I also understand that that a lot of a lot of counselors have to deal with what we call the STDs, right? So it's the scheduling, testing, and discipline. You don't really have time to talk about college admission stuff. And so, especially at the beginning of the year, I know you're so busy with all the scheduling stuff. So, so know that there is kind of a nice window of opportunity there too. And overall, as long as it doesn't conflict with other school events. So there's that.
Cool. Let's talk brainstorming. So there's a video among all the many videos that we have, that is my favorite video. And if you haven't seen this one, I want to recommend it, and I want to like show a screenshot of it. So and this is how I found it when I was prepping for today. I was like, you're like, how do you find CEG videos? You what? I just go to YouTube. In this case, I typed in brainstorm 7 ideas college essay guy. And there's a 27-minute video, which I know sounds like a long time, but in the world of brainstorming college essays, I don't think it's too much, where I share a way to help students brainstorm 7 different personal statement ideas. And why this video is 27 minutes long is it's a video that when students are, coming into like workshops and everything, or when I'm, doing these live sessions, I will walk students through these particular exercises to get ideas going. And I know that it's early, it's January to start thinking about, where do we slot this in? But I want to ping this for y'all if this isn't on your radar, as a potential resource. So let me show you real quick what's in this video so that you have a sense of it, and maybe it starts to slot in as like a new potential exercise. And I say this because I think for the past, like since College Essay Essentials, since my book came out, people are like, essence objects exercise, great. Values exercise, great. I think those are good exercises, but I think that this one is maybe a little bit better, sort of like the up-leveled version of that. So if you're somebody who's like already a fan of using those exercises, I want to encourage you on this session today to consider using this new exercise in when you're, helping students do things. And you can learn this and run it yourself, because I'm going to walk you through it right now, or you can just show them this YouTube video, because it's like it just walks them through the thing and they can kind of do it as they go. Another big thing that I'm big on is like helping students do brainstorming work asynchronously. So this is another thing that you can just have them do and be like, hey, do this, brainstorming video if you feel like, they'll do the work. So yay, the Pear Deck's working. Great. That's good. Okay. So here's a quick, let me just show you what's in this. This is like a workshop doc that I've used in the past. Okay. So essentially what I do is I give students essentially these 7 exercises. And each of these is geared toward a particular type of essay. My type of essay, I mean that, when I looked at hundreds of essays after the pandemic and was like, how are students arriving at their topics? I found that oftentimes they were writing about something that some of you from past sessions will know this, something that they love or know a lot about. So and this is what I do in the video, encouraging students to think about what are the things that you love and know a lot about, and just spending literally like 2 to 3 minutes making a list of those things. Those are potential essay topics. Beyond that, there's the essence objects exercise. I've underlined some of my favorites here. But in terms of these different, these exercises, and if you've never seen the essence objects exercise, it basically involves having students brainstorm a list of objects that they're excited that represent different, sides of who they are. There's also this list of random questions that I love to ask, and I ask them in the video. What is your actual superpower? How does your superpower manifest in the world? Is it listening to people? Is it finding patterns? Is it creating systems? If the zombie apocalypse came tomorrow, what particular skill would you use to survive? This became an essay 2 years ago. A student was like, here are my zombie apocalypse superpowers. Anyway, there's some other ones, lovely ones in here. The career one you're familiar with. It's students who are interested in a particular career. They brainstorm the skills or qualities that would help serve them in that career, and that ends up being the building blocks of the essay. Identities is one. This has become a big one, especially in the last year and a half, I would say, in essays, and especially since the Supreme Court decision to, ban race-conscious admissions. Colleges are interested in and asking a lot about identity. And I, am a huge fan of students writing about just not one identity, but like, what are the multiple identities that make up who you are? And so essentially asking them to consider what are those different identities and how do they come together to create a larger picture of who you are. Then there's homes, like what are the different homes, places where you find yourself in your zone or in your flow, asking students to just spend 2 to 3 minutes brainstorming different places and different, and sometimes combining the different homes that they, find themselves in with the different identities that manifest in those different homes, the places where they find themselves most comfortable. Because this could become an interesting essay topic. Like, I'm at home when I'm in the coffee shop, and here's why. Or I'm at home not just when I'm in the coffee shop, but also when I'm on the field, when I'm on the dance floor, et cetera, et cetera. And then, a culminating one that we love is thinking about the different islands of personality. So what are these different sides of me? How do they manifest in different parts of my life? And this is sort of a one where they can kind of look back at all the brainstorm they've done. And over the course of, like I said, again, like 25 minutes, students can start to think about all the different sides of themselves and how they manifest in their lives. So what I'm pitching to you in these 3 minutes on this session is like, could it be that questions like this could help you up level the kinds of brainstorming questions that you're asking students in those sessions? Because that's going to, when it comes to that topic check part and helping students figure out what the topics are, a lot of times for me, it's like going back. We got to go back and do more or different brainstorming. The students just haven't spent time, again, maybe like 25 minutes delving in and getting different ideas. Because I hate when a student comes to me with an idea and they've written this is their 3rd draft, and it's a topic that you're just like, I just don't know if this is your strongest topic. So I'm a huge fan of having students come up with several ideas so that they have more options, when they come to me with ideas. All right, Hannah, back to you. Are you ready? Are you able to share now? Does it work?
Yes. So I've figured out the issue. I promise it doesn't always act like this because I'm trying to promote it and I want it to work. I promise we're not sponsored. I wish they would sponsor us, but for all of our workshops, we do use an engagement platform called Pear Deck. Some schools have Nearpod. Most schools have used either Pear Deck or Nearpod, especially during virtual learning. I did teach during the pandemic, and this is what got me through. This is how I knew that students were actually with me. So whether you're doing virtual presentations or in person, Pear Deck or these interactive platforms are super useful because let's say you do have a group, even if it was like 30 students, I've done this with almost 200 students, you can actually see like all of their answers populate at once. And so, and they come in anonymously, and it gives students opportunities to be seen and heard, especially with some of these vulnerable, more personal topics. And as an introvert, I feel like I really am grateful for these opportunities to share without having to unmute or raise my hand and all those things. And it keeps them engaged. They're very excited because their answer might be chosen. And so we're going to actually, I'm going to go over this real quick. So I learned this during traffic school. Basically, he talked about how there's this Ben Franklin quote about tell me and I'll forget, teach me and I'll remember, but involve me and I'll learn. And that's what I love about the Pear Deck interactions, is that it involves them throughout the whole thing. You will not be able to move through the slides because I am I'm sharing them, and we're on like teacher mode. So if you were on student mode, you would be able to. So let's try it. I just want to go through this really quickly, but I want you to, if you are logged into the Pear Deck, I want you to answer some of these more vulnerable possible questions. Like, what is one of the most difficult things about your profession? What is something you wish you could change about education? What is something you wish you were more appreciated for? Okay, so I can already see, so there's about 77 students in the Pear Deck. There's about 200 something people in the room. I apologize if you can't get into the Pear Deck right now. That's okay. This is just for demonstration purposes. And so what I'm doing is I'm going to be reading these and starring some of the answers. So I'm just acknowledging that I see you. I see some of your answers. I feel really connected to a lot of these things as well. And so I am going to, in a bit, lock the screens and show the responses. That's what I would typically do for students. Since this is a group of adults, I won't be doing that. And I just kind of want to show how it looks. So I'm going to show the responses here, and you'll see these are just some of the answers from your peers here. So getting students to open up is the most difficult. Education needs to be more transparent from the perspective of admissions. So if you see, like, if this were teenagers, they can see that these are lives. That's why I lock the screens first, because you never know what they're going to write. Because I can see the names, but they don't always know that. So time crunches, student misconceptions, championing equity, so many great ones. And so I could even clear all the stars and show all the answers. So there are right now about 66 responses, right? So it's really, really amazing to be able to see these things, and anonymously, right? And so let me just give you a demonstration on how I would use this in a real workshop setting. So this is specifically for PIQs. And so this is something that I've done with students to ask, is this a strong response or a missed opportunity, right? So I'm just going to tell you the summary of this one. And the student is saying that his greatest talent or skill is knowing the ending of movies, right? That's his greatest talent or skill. He writes like this kind of unique thing. So I want to know, do you think this is a strong response or a missed opportunity? And it looks like didn't make it so that you could vote. Dang it. Okay, that's fine. Normally you could vote. And then I think because when I was transferring it over, it didn't transfer over. But anyway, most students will say, actually, I'm curious to see. Actually, I won't put you on the spot. And I'll mention the payment for the Pear Deck and stuff too, is most students will say it is a strong response, but this is actually a missed opportunity. And so it's really fascinating because this one tends to be 50-50. So even when I was at the UC conference online, most counselors actually said it was a strong response. I did say missed opportunity, but it's only because I felt like it wasn't really hitting the different comprehensive review topics. So, but this is actually a really cool way to do that. If we actually go back up to this slide, when we were talking about the checking in, you can actually move this little check mark around, asking the students where they're at. Yep, so I already see people trying it out. So you can see, you can move it around. I recommend not ever doing the drawing one because weird things, you'll see the weirdest things. So anyway, so let's move on into topic checks. So how do you save time? So ideally, even in our work at College Essay Guide, we only incorporated this a little bit later because yeah, we needed to save time. And so in screenwriting terms, there is something called a log line, which is essentially like the summary of the show or the movie. But it's not just a summary. It needs to actually grab the audience's attention, and they need to know immediately what it's going to be about. And so I wanted to show some quick sample log lines. So I was just kind of laughing at some of these because, like, the Office one, it shows inappropriate behavior and mostly tedium. I just rewatched Back to the Future, and it definitely, you know, is all these things. So I thought that was really cool. But I also want to show you how it'll look if students were able to do it. And it's awesome because they can do this and they can do it very, very well. And so, and it also gives you an idea of where the student's headed. So sometimes students will submit like an outline to us, but we do ask for a log line also, because if the students can't write that log line, sometimes maybe they're not even really sure where this is going, right? So by getting them to encapsulate it well in like about a sentence, it's like it shows the direction that they're going, and then you can see in the outline if it's really doing what they're saying they're going to do. And so yeah, so these are also really great examples. So when we do workshops, this is like what I would usually ask is, can you write a log line? So log line is a screenwriting term for a one-sentence description of your story. So here's an example, right? Although I initially saw my interest in cosmetics as a superficial obsession, through research and advocacy, I'm now a community leader and online advocate for ethical cosmetics testing and labeling. Wow, so good, right? So what I would normally ask is for students to write in their logline into the Pear Deck, right? So you could put in a dummy logline if you'd like. And so as they're coming in, I'll actually even like call them out, or I'll say like, oh, this one is working or not. And you can actually see, and I will share my screen here, and I'm just going to let you know it is going to show the names. So this is what I see on my back end, right? And then you could add feedback, right? You could actually directly give students feedback. So here's like everybody in the session. And so let me answer the question about, do you have to pay? So typically, so just to use Pear Deck, you do not have to pay, but you're going to miss out on this dashboard, which is so important, because if you share all the answers, the students, I'm going to tell you, they will write inappropriate things. Doesn't matter how good the students are. One, there's an anonymity, they will test their boundaries. So I'm just letting you know that that is the part that you're paying for. But especially if you get like a school account, it shouldn't be that much. Personally, even as a teacher, I was willing to pay to have this with my own money. So, but yeah, I think even some districts can pay for you, but look into it. And yes, so this is the way we do our workshops. I feel like it's truly worth the investment. So that's it for that part.
Thanks. The reason we're talking about workshops so much is in large part because we just think they're a really efficient way to meet with a lot of students at once. You can stop sharing, Hannah. I'll just go, no slides for this part. So one of the big things about, somebody mentioned earlier, like one of the big challenges is creating a space for psychological safety. And this is something that I spend a lot of time thinking about. We spend a lot of time thinking about. And I want to share some like practical things that I've found over the course of whatever the last couple of years have been useful. So the first one that I think is really important for creating a space for safety is getting consent. And by getting consent, what I mean by this is like having a moment at the start of whatever essay time when you're working with students where you go, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. Is everybody on board for that? And it's sort of like it can be assumed and like, hey, we're doing this no matter what. And that can look like many different things. But one of the ways that we do it is like, for example, having a set of agreements. So going into like a workshop time, let's say it's a 2-hour brainstorming session. Some of the things that we'll ask students to do is like, first of all, take care of yourself at this workshop. And we'll define what that means. So taking care of yourself might mean if you need to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. If you need to get water, get water. If there's an exercise that you're not comfortable doing, don't do it. And that's really important because we're a stand for self-care and taking care of yourself. And that's what that might look like for you today. And so it's meaning, and not just once or twice, but throughout the workshop setting, that you are opting into this, that you get to choose. And it's not like you're opting in once for the whole time, although we do ask that at the start, but it's like throughout, like decide where you're at and if this feels right for you or not. And making sure that there's not like low-key social pressure in middle moments where it's like, all right, everybody partner up, but you don't have to do this if you don't want to. Because if it's like it's everybody partner up, we're saying, well, there is kind of this, it's creating this social pressure anyway. So just making sure that students can truly opt out, and that there's a culture of that of students knowing that it's okay not to do the exercise, for example. The second thing is like I'll call this scaffolding the vulnerability moments. And this can be really personal work. And if we just start off with, the first question as students sit down is like, so what has your life led you to realize, or like something huge like this, like tell us about your relationship with your parents and how that's shaped you as like a starting question, like maybe going to be harder to get students on board and opening up. And so one of the things I think it's important to build in is like these different moments where maybe they're starting off with a partner and they're doing something like I love that's pretty light, again with consent, but it's like, hey, just make a list of things that you love, and your partner's just going to be listening and writing down the ideas. And I'll sometimes kind of like rate those, or like talk with Hannah about like what level of vulnerability do we feel like this is, and we try and go like, all right, let's have a 1 to 3 moment early on, and then like a 4 to 5 moment vulnerability thing, and then there's this other exercise that's like maybe potentially more vulnerable, 6, 7, or 8, but that we're kind of scaffolding those so that they're kind of becoming more and more comfortable with the idea of opening up. And so having like structuring the workshop so that it's like, all right, we're kind of working them into it, I think is really important. A third thing I think is as a presenter, and I'm talking as a counselor, like sharing personal examples, I find can be really helpful. And I think it lets students in a particular way and it gives them concrete things. So there's like, you can go hypothetical examples if you're more comfortable and say like, one student wrote about this, another student wrote about this. But I find that it's really cool to be like, identities, for example. So if you're thinking about identities, here's some different ways that I identify, and sharing your own identities and letting students get to know those different sides of you, I think can help build rapport, build trust, and kind of on a sort of psychological level, I find that when I see a presenter or a facilitator go out on the skinny limb, as it were, and they make themselves a little bit vulnerable, and then they see that socially it was okay and the limb didn't break, and they're like, oh, okay, cool, Miss So and so can do this, maybe I can do this too. And I think that we're kind of sending that message in subtle ways sometimes. So I would just encourage, and you kind of got to test these out because you don't want to go like level 9 vulnerable. Like one identity don't know about me is I'm a freak, and here's how, and whatever that means for you. So you got to kind of like make sure that whatever your identities are sort of in that whatever range you want to call it, the 5 to 7 range of vulnerability. I don't know, maybe 7 feels like too much for you, but I would say kind of test these out and test out the examples, and eventually, hopefully you'll land on some that are like, this is personal, or the level of personal that I'm comfortable with, but still kind of keeps whatever sort of, if you're trying to keep a particular role or particular, level set with your students. The other thing that I'll say, and this is a little bit more advanced and like particular, but when encouraging students to share personal statement stuff with one another, I think it's a really good idea to be really specific what you're asking of them within the sharing time. And I'll give you an example. If we're doing an exercise, a personal statement exercise, let's say it's in that time that Hannah's talking about, which is like late May, early June, and students are getting ready to head off into the summer, and you're pairing them up, and you say to them, all right, I want you to get in groups and give each other feedback. Like that can mean a lot of different things. And I think students can sometimes feel overwhelmed. And sometimes I think there's, in some cases, a chance of it like going awry without really specific directions about what to do. So a more specific version of that would be, for example, all right, so we've just done an exercise and we're going to get into pairs in a minute. And first of all, I want to say we're going to have about 10 minutes in pairs, but this sharing is going to be optional. So maybe both of you want to share and you split the time 5 minutes. Maybe just one of you shares and uses the whole 10 minutes. Either one of those is fine. Or maybe both of you are feeling like, you know what, I'm just not feeling like sharing right now. And you can just, have a conversation about, and you can kind of give some, I'm trying to, ask for consent and give options. But here's a way that this could go. And so now I'm kind of giving them the sort of what I'm hoping for. So what I'd love for you to consider doing is pair up with somebody else. And person A, you've done all this brainstorming work. I'd love for you to just share some of the pieces of the brainstorming that you've done. You can read through the I love, I know, the identities. And person B, I want you to just take notes as the other person's talking. And I want you to notice moments when you feel excited, energized, when you're leaning forward, or when you notice the other person excited, energized, leaning forward. Okay, so we're going to do kind of like a heat map, as it were. And once the first person has shared their different ideas, then person B, you're just going to share back when you saw that the other person lit up, or when you found yourself feeling really curious about something, and just share back with them, hey, I was noticing that I was curious about this particular thing. And so being really specific about, here's what I'm asking. I'm asking for person A to share whatever you're comfortable sharing. Person B, share moments when you were most excited or most curious, or when you saw the other person light up. And that's it. And I think giving students these parameters can help create that sense of safety. Like, I'm not going to have to reveal everything on this personal statement doc. I'm not going to have to like tell my deepest, darkest secrets. I'm actually just sharing some pieces and getting some feedback from this person on, what really landed, or what landed, or what resonated for them, or where they saw me light up. And so what we're trying to do, I think, is sort of create with students sort of like little sort of recreate that moment in our office when we would have that one-to-one interaction, and giving it to them not all at once and assuming that they're going to just crush it and be as good at, giving students feedback as you are, but like, hey, let me teach them how to give each other feedback in ways that feel safe, and give them these parameters. So anyway, I'm open to like more thoughts on that. And I could obviously definitely do a whole session on that, but I wanted to just offer a few tips in terms of that part of the process. Hannah, taking it back to you.
Okay. And so I'm going to show my screen here again. So additional tips. I know that a struggle that a lot of schools tend to have is how to get students to come to the things that you're about to present or workshops. I know Alex just went through that today. And so, I know that I know it's a struggle. So I know that oftentimes we do try to communicate with our students through email, but I don't know if you've ever seen their unread emails. It's like in the tens of thousands, everyone. So you have to just see because I even had to teach my Avid students, you're going to have a Yahoo, you're going to have a Gmail, all your junk ones go to Yahoo. You have to learn to filter things and archive and delete. I mean, my inbox is still in the 100, it's like in maybe 100, but it's because I keep them unread so I could do things, but it's not in the tens of thousands. So they might sometimes open them, but they don't really do anything with it. So make sure that it's not just the emails, but really trying to communicate through word of mouth, like trying to get students to invite other students, communicating through the classes, like I said, the English classes, if you can, to market it. But I also am providing, here, a Canva template. So if you wanted to put this on your social media or something, you could actually, we're providing these templates so that you can use them, populate them with your own things, and use it to advertise. So if you're on the Pear Deck, you should be able to click on it. I think we are still sending out the slides too, so you can get it later. Yeah.
Will you unshare the screen for just a second, Hannah? Because I want to do a little exercise with folks. Sweet. Thanks. Okay, so I want to take a minute and this is like a 3-minute writing exercise. And some of you already have like this already mapped out in a big, beautiful way. And some of you are like, I'm just starting to think about this. Hold on, it's January, Ethan. But I want you to like open a Google Doc or on a piece of paper real quick. And I want you to just, without thinking too much about it, create what is your rough draft of your college essay plan for 2024? Like, even just go by the months. When do we start? What are we going to do? And just rough it out real quick. And we're going to take like a minute or two to do this. Because what this will do is give you questions are going to pop up as you're doing this. What is your rough 2024 essay plan? When are you going to do stuff with students? And add at the end when you hope that they are done by. I know, with an asterisk. But like best case scenario. What'll probably start to happen is questions will start to pop up. Feel free to throw questions into the chat.
Mm.
Great question, Rebecca. I'll answer that in just a minute. I'll do my version of it at least. PIQs for folks not in California is personal insight questions for the University of California schools. I also want to invite, for those who feel inspired, feel free to comment on each other's questions. And here's what I do, and so that we get some cross-pollination in the chat. For example, we have a brand new counselor. Welcome to counseling, and congrats on the new school. What is the norm for students? It's going to be different for different folks. So I'd love to hear a few folks sharing on that. Yeah, okay. So this is great. You're one step ahead of me, T Simmons. Like, if you are open to it, I'd love to see some quick drafts in the chat. Like, what is your, this is going to populate the chat with a lot of stuff, but what is your rough draft of here's what you're thinking of for the plan? Because it would be, I think it'd be really rad to have an opportunity to see here's what other counselors are thinking of. And thanks, Alex, for capturing some of these questions. It's going to be harder now when it populates with all these plans. I'm just going to give us a minute or so to like read what other folks are sharing and posting. So I wonder if someone would be willing to raise a hand on the Zoom and just tell us your plan, and then let's troubleshoot for a couple minutes. And this will be like a 2 to 3 minute, mini session, but I'm curious if anybody's willing to do that and share their ideas, what they're thinking. And in particular, someone who like might have questions or really just wants like does this sound okay?
I see someone raising their hand. I don't know how to say your
What's
name.
Kim? I see Kim does.
I see M. Pyle. Is it Maria?
Well, I brought Kim forward first. Hi,
Hi.
Kim.
Hi, how are you? I just have
Awesome.
a quick question, just about not logistics, how do I say? So for some of my students, our classes are anywhere between maybe like 25 students. It can be up to 25 students in a classroom, 27 students. So how would you structure it so that way we're giving feedback, like adequate, sufficient, like quality feedback to all of our students? And I think our junior class is about like 325. And there are 3 CCR teachers, college and career readiness. So how would you structure that to make sure that we're giving feedback to each student? And
Yeah.
even students that, and I also seen a question in the chat, even students who aren't college bound.
Yeah. Hannah, do you want to take that one or do you want me to?
I have a question first. So
Okay.
how often are you meeting with the students in those 25 cohorts? Oh, sorry, you're muted.
Sorry. You said how often are we meeting? So our juniors have CCR, college and career readiness, twice a week. So they
Okay.
usually meet us twice a week, yes.
And so how often are you meeting twice a week up until the application?
Our classes are about 45 minutes.
Or how often, like, do you meet for essays?
Oh, I'm sorry. So we have, when it comes to college essays, they also get support in their like English classes as well. But they do the bulk of the writing with us. So they learn how to structure and things in English, and they do the bulk of the writing with us. I would say I think we have 2 to 3 weeks on our calendar just focusing on their essays.
Yeah. So the first part of your question was like, how do you give feedback to each of the students? So what I did in the classroom, because I would have up to like 30 students at a time, is putting them into smaller groups and randomized groups. So they're not sitting with their friends because their friends tend to tell them very nice things. So put them into groups of maybe 4 or 5 if the desk can be moved around. And then ideally, before you get to this point, you have modeled for them already the type of feedback you want to give. It's not like checking for grammar or like small little mistakes, but it's like big picture questions. So each day that we do these read around groups, I would focus, let's say, on the insights or looking at the opening or, you know, the topic or whatever it is. So they're in these small read around groups, and then one student will read out loud, other students give feedback. But as the facilitator, you're also floating from group to group to hear the feedback, to also give feedback. And so I had to do this because I was an English teacher with 170 students.
Okay.
I could not get multiple drafts in. This was the most efficient way for me to check on all of these drafts before they sent me something, so that it didn't feel like, oh my gosh, this is like so not great, you know? So even floating, and like you're trying to create little versions of yourself. Like they could hear like, oh, this is what Miss Lynn would say. This is the question that she would ask. So you have to like set them up to model enough for them. And that's why I was asking how many times are you meeting with them, so that you can build that foundation first, that these are the things that we're looking for, so they're not giving the wrong feedback. As far as like students who are not, you know, college bound or whatever, I would tell them, like, you guys, this is the one chance you get to write about your story. And like all students want to be seen or heard in some way. And sometimes I'll even say like, especially in California, like a lot of students get to go to community college for free, but they will transfer. And it's like, this will help you in the future, and you're not going to have me to help you. So do it now. And another thing that we do that has been so beautiful and amazing is that we actually create, I've done personal statement readings where students actually get it. Yeah, like a big circle. And it's almost like those tiny little circles in a big setting. They invite like counselors or teachers to come and listen to their stories. It is such a beautiful moment, an opportunity for them to share their stories. And oftentimes, because they know their peers are going to hear it, that ends up being the actual deadline more than the college one. You know, like, oh my goodness, this is really going to matter because people are going to hear it. So that's my long answer to your 2 questions. But yeah,
Thank you so much.
It's awesome. Excited for you.
Yeah. Thanks, Kim. I mean, one of the things that we're excited to do is ideally like, in fact, we talked about doing this, is like, if folks want to have more of this kind of conversation, we'd love to like, you know, set that up and make that happen. So here's just quick PSA. So there are 3 things that we want to share, and then we'll get to Q&A. Let me just share my screen again. So here's quick PSA. So one of the things that we want to talk about is for folks who are interested in like learning the whole way that we do this. I saw some folks coming through in the chat. We've got a counselor training program that's coming up. It starts in 2 weeks. And essentially in this, it's 4 weeks with me to work on just the personal statement stuff. And I'll just show you the thing real quick. Basically, I walk through the personal statement course on like how to help students brainstorm, structure, revise. And a big part of it is figuring out how do you kind of create that, up level for yourself and create that spidey sense where you kind of know what a good topic is. And in particular, how do you then teach it to students so that they can do it for themselves? Because I'm really big on that. And whenever I teach courses, I'm big on that. And then I do a course on not just thinking about the personal statement, but the application and supplemental essays. We'll email you all more info on that, but we've got pay what you can spots for school counselors. And I'd love to have some of y'all on. They're pretty lively sessions, and it's taught during the school day. So I know that's not ideal for some folks, but anyway, folks can watch recordings. The other thing, somebody asked, how do you get college essay guy to come to your school? We've got workshops and professional development opportunities. And Alex, if you wouldn't mind just sharing the link in the chat for the training program, because I have this one standing by. But if you're interested in, having CEG come to your school, we'd love to come present. We've got tons of workshops that we do. We've got PDs that we do for English teachers. And it's a cool opportunity to sort of like get everybody on the same page, in terms of college admission fundamentals. What are colleges looking for? How is it different from an English essay? So lots of different pieces. And then this form here basically just sends you to a form where, you basically get on Hannah's calendar and chat through, hey, here's what that might look like. We've got a bunch of different kinds of workshops. Somebody asked about personal statements and UCs. I want to talk about that during Q&A in just a minute. And stay tuned, because in a minute, we're going to give away 3 free workshops in just a second. But this is something where we'd love to connect with y'all. Aside from this, if you're like, I would just love to just brainstorm just like you did with Kim and just get on a call. Han and I thought it would be fun to do a follow-up to this session where we just get in a room in small groups and just kind of do what we just did with Kim, but like for an hour. And we would do this in kind of a small group setting. So I don't know if folks are interested in this, but if you are interested in that, and this is going to sound kind of clunky, but just throw your email into the chat and Alex is going to grab your email. And what we'll do is we'll follow up with everybody and be like, hey, let's do a group session in like 2 weeks where we basically just get on and connect with you all to sort of think through what is your essay plan. Now, once you've had a couple weeks to sort of marinate on a little bit. So throw your email in the chat. We'll grab those and we'll follow up in a week or so with just some like potential times to do that. We'll probably do a big doodle poll and be like, hey, when can folks make it? And then we'll pick the most popular one and then we can just get in and brainstorm. But what else? Let's see. Did we cover all the things? I'm looking at my slides. Let's see. Did we do the things? I think we did the things. Okay. Alex, if you would be so kind as to throw in the form that you sent at the beginning of the session. So this is just a form that's like, hey, tell us about you. You've maybe filled this out before, but it's going to be our way of grabbing randomly 3 people, 3 different schools to go do free workshops at. So if you wouldn't mind putting that in the chat, Alex, that would be lovely. There it is. It's the one that says https://forms. And yeah, that's the one to fill out. So we've got some folks that have already started to fill it out, but at the end of the Q&A in like 5 minutes or so, whoever has filled that form out, we'll just grab 3 random schools for that. And then this afternoon, by the way, if you work with students one-on-one and you have a smallish caseload and you have the benefit of being able to dive in with them, we're going to get even more specific about how do you get in with particular students and how do you create your workflow? I'm going to do like a little behind the scenes of like, here's what it looks like at CEG when we work with students on one-on-one. So I'm going to kind of walk through that whole process, and I'll talk a little bit more about topic check and how we get to the almost done phase and the almost done process and more on that. So come back at I guess it's 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. We'd love to have you. That should be in your email as well. Thanks for resharing the poll, Alex. So let's do some questions. One of the questions that came in is the question about personal statements versus UCs. Like, how does the timing of that work? So I would say I've kind of gone back and forth on this over the years, but I find that for some students, if they're very personal statement, like private school focused, I find that starting with the big essay helps earlier because then they've got more time to marinate and iterate, etc. And so in the past, and when I like lead my courses during the summer, I'll start with that one because that's sort of like the big one. But some students are just more UCs focused and they want to make sure they get those done. And sometimes they'll generate ideas that can be sort of put together and then turn into a personal statement. So I think, and this is not going to be a satisfying answer, but I think either approach can work. So approach one, calendar for, let's say, sort of like my ideal calendar, is students would begin the personal statement brainstorming process as soon as that May, June process, they've done some iterating, and then they move into outlining and structuring, and they've got some sense of their personal statement in that sort of June to July range. This is the arc of my course. And then in July, then we add, okay, let's start talking about application and supplemental essays. And then they're starting to think about, okay, what are the other pieces of my application? What I do in July is then I get into the UC PIQs because that for me is like a supplemental essay, and students are brainstorming what 4 different stories that they want to tell. Now, what will sometimes happen is students go through the personal statement process. They've kind of got an idea, but not a really strong idea. They do their UCs and they're like, here's my idea. So I've really seen it work that students didn't come up with their personal statement idea in June and that something popped for them, or it became really clear once they thought about their UCs what their personal statement topic could be. Other option, if you've got a huge population of students that are definitely applying to the UCs, I could see doing UC workshops. And first you could do those and get them started in June. And like, hey, let's figure out our UC topics. Let's figure out our UC activities list, because that's going to be longer than our Common App activities list anyway. Let's get those done over the summer. And then we shift into personal statement writing. But because the word limit is different, the UC is 350, and because they're very informationally focused, I don't find always that the UCs are a reliable way to definitely find that personal statement topic, especially if students are aiming for more highly selective schools. I think that it's great if students are aiming for non-highly selective schools, let's say selective schools that are sort of in that 30 to 50% range of acceptance, I think writing a personal statement in that case can work, like take the UCs and adapt them. Because I find that the most important thing there is to have a solid personal statement, but it doesn't have to be like a wow personal statement. That's sort of just like they've spent a lot of time on. And I think you know what I'm talking about, but I'll just be like more specific. Like I think certain schools really care and the personal statement really matters. And I think for other schools, it's like, did you submit a personal statement? And there is, I think, a small batch of schools as well that don't necessarily look at them. I've had schools that I've met with that are just like, we don't really care about the personal statement. It's really about the grades. So Hannah, are there other questions that have popped up that you want to hop in on?
I think they also brought up supplementals because I think that might apply to most folks too. So
Yeah. Want to talk about that?
yeah, I mean, they could start before August 1st, but sometimes, if you are already covering a ton of stuff, maybe after August 1st, when the supplementals are released and things, you could talk about it then. That could be something that you can wait until like when you get back to school, because it is a lot. I think the students are mostly focusing on the main statement in the summer and then the supplementals, but it's not a hard and fast rule. So.
Yeah. I've gone back and forth with that too, where I'm like, I love getting students started on their supplements because I know we know generally what those are going to be. Last year was an anomaly where like it was so many new supplemental essays that students couldn't start until August. But my hope, my sort of like dream scenario is over the summer, students can get their personal statement. And if they're applying to early schools, those early schools done. So if they know I'm definitely wanting to apply to this school, early action, early decision, great. And we kind of have to guess and hope that the essays are going to say the same, but they've at least got August to work on those supplements. Which colleges that don't care about to read the personal statements? I feel like if I went on record, then I might get in trouble because it could be that those things shift. So I want to like hold off on that. But if you find me at a conference or something, yes, I will tell you one-on-one. Let's see. I'm curious about transitioning the students from brainstorm and topic selection to actual essay structure. So this is something that's like, oh gosh, I could spend an hour just talking about this. So let me do the short version of this. So when it comes to students figuring out, okay, I've done brainstorming, I've got all these different ideas. How do I actually pick an idea? And then how do I actually pick a structure? So in terms of, and I know we're over on time, we will pick workshop winners in 2 minutes, I promise. So in terms of picking an actual idea, when it comes to a montage idea, which is what I call a thing that is not an essay that's based on challenges, I think that a good structure for helping students to think through this is this topic common or uncommon? And is it elastic or not elastic? And what do I mean by this? This is a very short version of something that I'm going to spend a lot of time on in the course, but the uncommon topics, and you kind of need to help them with this, are things that other students aren't writing about. And they oftentimes have an internal sense of this, but this is where you can kind of help. But it's sort of like, okay, common topics are common extracurricular activities, sports, music, basically, pick an extracurricular activity that other students do. Whereas uncommon topics might be things that, broadly speaking, maybe another student isn't writing about these 3 different identities. So that would be, largely speaking, an uncommon topic. Elastic, is it a topic that a student is going to be able to connect to lots of different sides of themselves? So, for example, a topic like 3 different identities that I hold. So my theater nerd identity and my missionary kid identity and my, I don't know, speech and debate side identity, those are extracurricular activities, each connect to different values. Or like my oldest sibling identity connects to different sides of me. And so what we're looking for is, or helping students to look for, is which topic is going to be uncommon, ideally, and elastic, connects to different sides of me. So that's a simple framework, relatively simple, for helping students think about which topic to choose. In terms of structure, I don't have lots of time to talk about it today, but there is a whole follow-up video to the one that I linked earlier that is like, okay, once you've got a topic picked, then you can use something called the jellyfish exercise, which is also on YouTube, to help students think about, is this topic actually going to work? Is it going to connect to different sides of me? And that can lead them right into like potential topics. So I'm sorry, that's a totally dissatisfying answer that I squeezed into 2.5 minutes. But that's sort of like the rough version, and then where to find the answer for the other one. Okay, it looks like a lot of people want to do this brainstorm with us, so I'm excited. And somebody's saying damn. I'm wondering what the damn is in response to. Okay, so let's pick some workshop winners, and then we will get into. Do you have the behind the scenes, Alex, of the workshop replies? If not, I can grab it.
No, I don't have that handy.
Great, I'll grab that. While I'm grabbing that, Hannah, is there one more question that's come through in the chat that we could maybe answer? If not, I should have this up in just a second.
Trying to go through all the emails to find a question.
They're on that doc too. Hannah.
Oh,
Thank you.
because of the technical difficulties, I never opened the doc. I'm so sorry. For your patience.
You know what we'll have to do? I think what we might do, just to save folks time, is let's just pick them. We'll just pick them as soon as we get out of this session, and we'll grab them and we'll just share via email in the follow-up email who won the workshop, the free workshops. So sorry, that's like a bit anticlimactic because we were going to be like, and you get a workshop, and you get a workshop, and you get a workshop, but we'll just pick them here in just a couple minutes, and we'll just pick folks randomly. And then in the follow-up email, which has already been written, which is cool, that we send tomorrow, we'll be like, here, contact Hannah for these workshops. For all of you who put your email in, awesome. We're going to follow up with a brainstorming session where we can kind of do a part 2 and get really tactical. For your homework, I want to say is like, go and figure out, to whatever extent you can, on a Google Doc, here's my essay workshop plan, because probably what would be great to do is just to, at the start of that, we're going to break up into small groups, and then folks can kind of share with one another, here's what I'm thinking for my plan, and just get some feedback from somebody. And then we'll probably do like a big Q&A in small groups, where we'll kind of brainstorm on these. For those of you, again, who are like interested in working with us, connecting with us, we'll send out the link for that with the recording and everything else. So AI, oh gosh, AI. Let's just work in AI here real quick. We're going to do a whole separate session, Susan, because it wasn't particularly like about creating your essay plan. I'm going to do a whole separate sessions inside the program, but also more publicly talking more about AI and how to potentially incorporate it. Because I think there's some really awesome ways that I'm kind of excited about incorporating AI. So we'll do a whole separate session on that, so that we definitely will cover it. All right, much love. Thanks you all for being here, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.